Hi, I'm Chris Sikora, and I'm going to step you through Exercise 1, SolidWorks 2023. And this is an entire course, so you could go on to Exercise 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. If you just type in and through YouTube, the search, you should be able to find those. But we're going to begin by taking a look at what's up on the screen. What we have there is just kind of a widget. It's a thin-walled part. We're going to build that today. And we're going to see how sketches are created inside SolidWorks, as well as how to extrude them, create holes, chamfers, like you see here, and fillets, which are rounds or radiuses that you see there. And the back side, you can see it's shelled out like a thin-walled plastic part. So let's begin. So once you have SolidWorks installed, just go to File, New, and you'll get three options. There's three primary file types that are in here. And by the way, this is all in a training guide that's available in the link below in YouTube, as well as on the webpage for Vertanux1, as you see here, Vertanux1.com. And you could grab it under the training guides section. And I have them for earlier versions as well. So anyhow, inside here, we're going to just go through what's inside that training guide, essentially. Okay, so we have parts, assemblies, and drawings. The first 4 weeks, we do nothing but part files. The 5th week, we start taking a look at assemblies, and by the 6th week, we're actually doing all three, parts, assemblies, and drawings, which drawings are the 2D element of these models. So let's begin by selecting part and hit OK. Now, in the lower right, you'll see mine is set to IPS, which is inch pounds second. I would set it to that because that's what I'm using. And if you want, you could go to Edit Document Units, and you could actually see in here where you could set how many decimal places you would like to see for length. So like here, you could go to 3 decimal places, or you could go all the way up to 8 decimal places. So extremely high precision. We'll go with 0.123. You could also dual dimension. You could set it to what essentially all the different properties are here. You'll see that this is really the heart of SolidWorks. Now, the other area you could get to this is through the little gear here as well. But you can see there's system options and document properties. The difference between the two is system options are global settings. Once you set them, it's pretty much set in there until you change them again. Document properties are settings that are just for the specific document you have up. So currently we have this one part file up. We just set that to inch pounds second. So it will only affect that one part file. So if you want to set these things up or go to system options, you can see the different types of options you have there. You're not going to find everything in both that are exactly the same. But anyhow, we'll go into more detail with that as we go along. And so that's the options section, or what I like to call the heart of SolidWorks, because pretty much everything's in there that you need if you want to find a setting. All right, now that we have our part file, what we're going to do is we're going to set up the material over here. This is actually, let's break this down. First of all, I have this pull down menu set up. You may not have that. And I like having it turned on, and notice I just go to that little arrow next to SolidWorks. It pops up and I tack it in. This is supposed to be a picture of a thumbtack. If you click on it, it will lock it in. I like to use pull downs because sometimes it's easier than trying to describe an icon to my classes, my students, I should say. And you still have all the same options for save and print and so on and so forth. This is called the ribbon, and the ribbon gives you all the different kind of modules, you might say, in SolidWorks. So for example, you could go to SolidWorks add-ins, and some of these you may or may not have, depending upon the license of SolidWorks that you've procured or that you've been given. And so like, for example, PhotoView 360 may be grayed out, may not be an option for you. In this license, I have it. So beware, there are some things that you might not have depending upon what you have. Okay, but I'm going to go back to features, the tab. All right, and over here, this is the Feature Manager Design Tree, or Feature Tree, or Tree for short. And what this is your roadmap of everything that you're going to do. And it's going to keep a chronological order, starting from the very beginning all the way to the bottom as your last part. The very first one is up the top. And you could edit those features like sketches, as well as extrusions and radiuses and so on and so forth, just by right-clicking on them. And you also have these planes, front, top, and right. And as I hover over them, you can see in the what we call the viewport, you could actually see them highlight. And those are your paper. That's what you're going to start off sketching on. Now you're not constrained to just those three. Once you start making parts, any flat surface of the model you could sketch on. So be aware that you're not going to just have to sketch on those. Also, you could set the material for the part. And this is very nice. It's an option really, but if you right click on it, you'll see there's some commonly used like 1060 alloy, plain carbon steel, copper. By default, SolidWorks I think uses something like, if you look at the mass properties, would indicate it's like an ABS plastic. But if you go to edit material here, you could set that up differently. And so you'll see there's a whole library, and you could procure additional libraries, or you could create your own custom materials. So if it's not found in here, you could go in here and create your own and save it. And let's take a look here. Let's go to aluminum. Hit the little arrow. You'll see all the different alloys, and we'll go with the 1060, which is a very basic, weak alloy. And look at the properties in most cases are already put in for you. Some of them you'll have to put in because it could vary from vendor to vendor. But like for example, look at the yield strength, the tensile strength. You could set this to megapascals or IPS, so you could look at it from PSI. I will be using throughout the class, even though I use the imperial form of measurement, like feet, inches, and I know that's like old-fashioned, but we are here in the US and my students really know what those things are, whereas metric may not be as familiar. So the metric system is easier and better, I'll say that, but we're going to be using that here. So anyhow, as you can see, there's the tensile strength, yield strength, and we'll discuss those in the future as we go along. But let's go ahead and hit apply and close, and now you can see it's listed as 1060 alloy. What's really cool is that after we're done modeling our part, we could go in here to the evaluate and see this little scale. It's grayed out right now because there's nothing to evaluate. That will tell us how much our part weighs. And so you could do material calculations. How much do you need? All right. So anyhow, let's continue on here. I'm going to go back to features. Okay, we're going to start a sketch. So go ahead and click on the front plane. Oh, by the way, the origin. The origin cannot be moved inside SolidWorks. You could create additional WCSs or world coordinate systems that you could export from and things like that. So you can do that, but this one is locked in, and I really like that it does that because it's your anchor point. You want to try and lock your things in, although you're not forced to. You don't have to, but for my class, I'd like you to follow that practice, lock things into the origin. We'll see how that works in just a second. So let's go ahead and select the front plane. Now, when you're sketching something or designing something, it's really up to you what you want to think of as what's the front view, the side view, the top view, and where you're starting with. So if I had to model this remote control for television, I would say that's the front. This is the top, and that's like the right side. So you can basically pick those and then select the plane that you want to sketch on. And I picked the one that has the most bang for the buck, you might say. So like I would probably pick the front, because there's through holes, or there's holes inside there and such for the buttons, and I could draw that out and then lay it out. Versus if I were to draw from the side, it's, on the front plane, it's not really telling you a whole lot there. Anyhow, this is not the best example, but the truth is it doesn't really matter all that much. You are able to adjust things. It's not easy to adjust things once they're drawn, but once they're in an assembly, it could be manipulated as long as you have an idea of spatial awareness of what you're working on. It's not so bad. Okay, but do what your employer tells you. If they want you to draw on the front plane every time, do that. Okay, but we're going to pretty much draw on the front plane almost every time. There will be a few times where we'll draw on the top, maybe the right. But let's go to sketch. So if you click on that, you'll see this little quick launch toolbar appears. If you've already moved your mouse, don't worry, it disappears. You could always go up and get it up here. You could go to the sketch tab, and then if you hit the little arrow under sketch, just want to show you, anytime there's a little arrow associated with an icon, that means there's more options for that. You'll see sketch, 3D sketch, and 3D sketch on plane. The 3D sketches we're not going to do until the 7th or 8th week, actually. They are great for doing piping, wires, wire harnesses, things like that. Not so great for modeling what we're doing today. So really, the 3D sketches, as much as you think this is a 3D modeler, it is. We're not going to use that tool just yet. That's a more advanced tool, but it's pretty cool what it does. But we're just going to use sketches because these are essentially 2D sketches on planes. We're going to draw a profile. Now you saw that part earlier that we're creating. It was really just a series of rectangles. So if you go to corner rectangle, hit the little arrow, you'll see there's all sorts of ways to make rectangles. And in fact, for one of your labs after this exercise, I'm going to show you, I think it's lab 1B. There's 1A and 1B. So the first lab, we're not going to do this, but the second one will actually do center rectangle. And I'll show you what that's about. So if you watch the video through, you'll see how that works. And then we will use it later too. Okay, but let's go to corner rectangle. Just start off easy. Now you'll see there's lines and circles and all sorts of things you can choose from, pretty much all the basics. You can also pick the rectangles afterwards and you can put in parameters. But hold your pointer, actually don't click on anything, just move your pointer now, which looks like a pencil, to the origin. That's your center marker in space, 0, 0, X, Y, and Z, 0. That's our anchor point. Once you hover over it and you see a little orange dot appear, and a little yellow box to the right of your pointer, which indicates a symbol, which we'll talk about in a second. That's a relationship. Go ahead and click one time. And when I say click, I'm referring to your left mouse button every time. If we use our right mouse button or the middle button, or which is the wheel in this case, I will make sure I tell you, and I'll repeat it twice just so you don't accidentally select the wrong button. But 90% of the time we select using the left mouse button. I will point out the right mouse button when we use it, and that's usually for context-sensitive menus. So if you right-click, you're going to get some menus that appear and such, and options. Okay, so after you click on that, you can release it and move your pointer to the upper right here. And you'll see some X and Y feedback in the upper right corner of your pointer, as well as you see it in the lower left the side of your screen. You'll see parameters. Now, I've seen people use those parameters before, and that's usually, it's a nice tool, but it doesn't fully define the shape. And later on, if someone goes to edit it, they'll find you didn't really put the dimensions in accordingly, and this could be moved and adjusted very easily and screwed up. So I don't recommend using that. The company I worked at in the past did not like us using that because we had issues when someone used that and then someone went in and accidentally moved things. It was lost. So in terms of the dimension, that was actually in there originally. So be aware, I'm going to show you a better way to do things than that. Okay, so just move your pointer up here and click. And that will release and create a rectangle. Now, hit escape on your keyboard. You'll see these little green boxes. And we'll talk about those. Those are relationships. Okay, I'm going to hit escape on my keyboard. Escape is a universal tool that gets you out of whatever sketch tool you're in. Doesn't get you out of everything, but most of the sketch tools will get you out of it. There might be some other options where you have to click on the actual icon to turn it off, but for the most part, remember escape on your upper left corner of your keyboard. Okay, now you can see these boxes indicate vertical and horizontal relationships. There effectively are two types of constraints inside SolidWorks. There's dimensional constraints, which we don't have any up here right now because you don't see any dimensions. And there's these types of constraints, relationships, which are essentially common elements of geometry: vertical, horizontal, tangency, coincident, parallelism, things like that. And we're going to learn most all of those before the end of this semester. So these could actually be deleted, but right now, look at this. If I click and hold my pointer over this line once it turns orange, you can move it. It's very flexible. And you get some feedback down below here as well to let you know what's going on. But notice if I click on a corner, it always stays vertical, that particular line. Now, I don't want you to do this part, but just watch for a second. Let's say I clicked on that relationship. You can delete them. If I click on it and hit delete on my keyboard, it disappears. Now what happens is if I drag this, look at that. I could go at an angle. I don't want that though. I just wanted to show you what you can do with those. My suggestion is you don't delete those unless it's absolutely necessary. unless you really want an angle. So what we could do now is actually learn the undo tool, which is very important. Right here, there is undo. Go ahead and hit it. Control Z is the fast key, by the way. Click on it. That's one time. But notice the little green box did not return, so hit undo again, and it should bring it back. If you actually did this with me. I told you not to do it, though. All right. Notice the colors, too. These two lines are black. That means they're fully defined. The blue lines here and here indicate they're underdefined, meaning we could stretch them. Okay, we could drag them up and down and such. But watch this. We're going to try and fully constrain this. Right now it says this is underdefined. And underdefined is not optimum, by the way. SolidWorks will let you have an underdefined sketch and continue on and model the whole part with underdefined geometry. But that means you're missing actual dimensions and possibly relations. And things could change, and it could have spell some trouble out for you later on. So what we want to do is use the Smart Dimension tool. If you hit the little arrow underneath Smart Dimension, you'll see there's horizontal, vertical, baseline, chain, ordinate. There's all sorts of ways to actually automatically dimension as well the geometry. But we're going to start off with the basics here, and we're going to dimension manually. So go to Smart Dimension, which is actually pretty smart in most cases. Hover over that blue line, and a lot of you might have migrated from a different CAD system. Not all CAD systems let you select the line and just dimension the length of it, but SolidWorks does. Rather than clicking on 2 points and moving your mouse in between, you can do that, but watch this. Click on the actual line, drag it to the right, and center your dimension, because that's how a drawing should look. Those of you who may not have the experience with 2D detailing yet, that's a little side note. Okay, I'm going to center the dimension right about there, and you can see it's not what we want. What we want eventually is 5 inches. So click. Now it brings up this modify box. Now in the modify box, there's actually a spinner. Look at this. I could grab this little spinner here and adjust it with that. I could hit the little arrows up and down and adjust it that way. Or while the whole thing is still illuminated in blue, I could type in my value. This needs to be 5 inches in height. So you don't have to type 5.000. You don't even have to click on this and backspace over it or delete it. That makes you look kind of amateurish. And right now you are an amateur, so that's fine. But I want to show you how to look like a professional. And right now, while that's still illuminated in blue or selected, just type 5 on your keyboard. And if you're using the keypad on the right, make sure number lock is on. Otherwise, it won't work. So the number lock button, which is on the keypad on the right side, make sure you click on that if you're using that. That also makes you look very professional. Those of you who are looking to do this for a career, these are just suggestions. Okay, so I typed in 5. Again, you don't have to type 0.000. You can, but it's a waste of time. Hit the green check mark. Now, the red X would cancel it out. This would regenerate it with the current value, but still leave the box open so you can make changes. And then there's some other options here, which I'm not going to go into all of them. Hit the green check, and you'll see it will stretch out the box. And now it's actually stretched outside of our boundary. Now, here's a couple things. You could hit the F as in fit key, letter F as in Frank or fit. Click, and that will center it to the screen. Okay, so that's a fast key. Now note that that's in here too. Look at that, zoom to fit is right here. We could click on that. This is zoom to area. Go ahead and click on that. And let's say you want to zoom up to this corner. Just click and drag, and it should zoom up to it. Now you could hit zoom to fit, or better yet, you could hit previous view, and that will take you back. Notice it gives you a little hint in parentheses, like what the fast keys are. Those of you who like fast keys, they're great to learn because they're going to make you look exceptional at this software if you could remember them. I'm not particularly great at remembering all those, especially the 3-digit ones, but anyhow. All right, section view, we don't want to use that yet, but there's some other options in here. There's view orientation. I'd rather you not learn or select these just yet. I want to show you when they're more applicable. Okay, now hover your pointer, because you should still be in the dimension mode. If you're not, make sure that this is pushed in. And if you're hovering over this white area, to the right of your pointer, there should be a symbol of the Smart Dimension on. Okay, let's go ahead and click on this line here, get it down below there, click, and let's go ahead and type in 3. Now, just to show you how inexperienced this looks. I have a lot of new students do this, and even I've seen students who've come from industry that do this. They click in there and they backspace, and then they type in 5.000. Now remember what we did earlier? Just type 5 and hit the green check. You can do that. Now there also is this units that pops up below, so you could interchange the units, by the way. If you knew what this was in metric, you could type that in and then type mm, and it will know to convert it for you, because we're in IPS right now, or inches pound second. So you could reverse it really easy. SolidWorks is very easy about it. Makes it very easy, I should say. And in fact, I made a mistake here. So I'm going to backspace 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and type in 3. It's supposed to be 3 inches wide. My apologies. Hit the green check. All right, and it should show up there. Now, if not, you could double click on the dimensions and type in the value again. All right. Hit the green check and it should update. All right, so now we have this. We have the colors have transformed to this black. The inside, notice that's a shaded gray. That means it's watertight. That gray is kind of, you can imagine thinking it's like water. That means there's no open boundary condition where it's going to spill out. And open boundaries cause problems in some cases. So this is good. Let's go to features now. Now the features tab, what differs from the sketch tab and the features tab is you are going to 3D. The sketch tab was really for 2D. Now we're going into 3D with features. So click up here on features, go to extruded boss base. Also notice that SolidWorks grays out all these icons. That's the object action paradigm. It doesn't give you options you can't select. So go to extruded boss. That's a nice feature because it doesn't confuse you as much. All right, now over here on the left, the feature tree has disappeared for a second. It's actually right there. You could click on that tab and it pops out here. So you can see it if you want to. We don't really need it just yet. But you have options. Now you could adjust and have this extrude from a different location other than the existing plane. That's more advanced. We're not going to touch that for a while. Okay, but anyhow, where we have here, we have blind. We have different options. Blind just means a specific depth. And so here's where we put in the depth. So we wanted to go a ½ inch, so 0.5. 0.5. Don't forget the decimal place. All right. And if you click out here, you'll see it will update with a kind of a jello part. It's transparent yellow. And you can see what a preview looks like. You could also, if you wanted to conceptualize, you could click on this arrow and drag it, and you get a ruler. And the ruler is okay. It does snap to increments here, but that's an easy 1.5. So we'll use that. So you could use either this or that to get to it. And now you hit the green check mark or enter, and you should get this. Now, you might see this blue geometry. That's a leftover selection. And the way to get rid of that, the escape key, or just click over here in the open area, and it should disappear. Notice if I select the part, I could see the dimensions. So by clicking on it, it turns blue. I can see the dimensions appear. You could select any of these entities. All right. Mine may look a little different than yours, though. Those of you who do not have a professional graphics card, that means like a Quadro or a Ryzen Pro, you may not be seeing this like this. Some of them, some of the GeForce cards, the higher end, I do believe support RealView. I know there's videos on how you could trick it in the configurations on how to use it, or you could select different drivers. So many of you may have what looks like this. All right. And again, that's if you don't have a professional graphics card. Professional graphics cards are specifically designed for computer-aided design applications typically. And so if you're going to do this for a living, make sure you're working off of a professional graphics card. If you're working off of a gaming card, even though it may have 24 gigs of RAM and might be incredibly powerful, you might have some issues because it's designed for gaming. The drivers are designed for gaming. but the drivers for a professional car are much better. So remember that they no longer call it the Quadro series, it's the RTX, like T series or A series actually, that you could pick from NVIDIA, as well as the P series, which comes on the Xeon processors from Intel. That actually supports this, as well as the Radeon Pro graphic cards. Okay, so now that we have our model, let's see how we could rotate this. So to rotate it, your arrow keys on your keyboard, hit your left and right arrow keys, up, down, left, right, and it rotates in 15-degree increments. If you hold the Alt key in your left and right arrow keys, it rotates clockwise and counterclockwise. If you hit Shift in your arrow keys, it rotates in 90-degree increments. If you hold Control in the arrow keys, it pans left, right, up, and down. Right? And there's a lot of those. I'm not going to go through all of them. Now, over here you have, if you hit this little arrow here, you get this little dialog box. I should say it's not a dialog box, but it's a box with front, top, right, so you could rotate to those views. So there's front. Okay. You could also hold the right mouse button and drag to the right, and that gives you right. Hold the right mouse button down, drag to the left, so that's the right mouse button, not the left. Okay, so kind of neat, and you could look at the bottom. Now, if you hit your spacebar, and this is the easiest one to remember, it brings up the orientation box, and that's similar to the, almost identical to the one we have over here. It's just separate. You could tack this in, and you'll see some people just keep it on tacked in there and just could click at any time. You could now go and find over here, there is isometric. And there's a reminder to save. We could save in just a minute. But there's dimetric, trimetric, isometric. You see the subtle differences. Those of you who are going to save this part as a PDF later and upload it to D2L, I'd like you usually to have an isometric view. So just remember that's how you could get it. Now, there are other options on there. We're not going to go through all of them. There are the options though here, like if you'd like to break up your screen into 4 different views and work from there. Okay, and then you could click over here. You could have 2 views, vertical or horizontal, however you want it. But I'm going to go and click on isometric. Oops, that's trimetric. There we go. And I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to just hit the X there. All right, so we have that now. Here is the really nice way to do it. On your mouse, the wheel, if you scroll it, it's for zoom in and out. And depending upon where you are, if you put your pointer, like let's say I want to zoom up to this corner in the upper right, focus your pointer on that. Just hover over it and start scrolling the wheel towards you, and it will focus on that point. Now you could go over here and click on zoom to fit, or the F key again, it brings you out. Sometimes if your part disappears, just try hitting the zoom to fit. That will, sometimes it just gets rotated or moved out of the view. All right, now to rotate. Get your pointer in the center screen, and with the wheel, instead of rolling it, push it down like it's a wheel, like it's a button. Hold it like it's a button and move your mouse left, right, up, and down. That's how you dynamically rotate. Okay, so there you have a bunch of different options. We're going to cover more later on, but ultimately, let's go back to this. Now, notice with this little view selector, like it looks like an ice cube, you could select polygons on these surfaces to get to those as well. So that's kind of neat too. Sometimes you see people turn it off. Okay, I'm going to go back here because I have RealView graphics, because I have a professional graphics card in here. So I'm able to actually see it, and it is nice. I kind of like it. Not everyone likes it. So you could turn it on or off. And if you don't have it, you don't need it. It's really just a luxury at this point. Okay, now let's go ahead and continue building. Select this face. Now remember I told you in the very beginning you have front, top, and right planes that are on the left side there that you could sketch on. But you don't always have to sketch on those. You could actually sketch on the surfaces. So select this surface as long as it's flat. And you'll see the quick launch comes up, and there's all sorts of options you could go with. Now sketch is the one we want to go with. Notice there's this edit sketch. Stay away from that one. That will edit that 3x5 box and allow us to change it. We don't want to change it. It's good the way it is, but we will use that from time to time. But go ahead and click on sketch. Now the other area you could go, if you moved your pointer and it disappeared, you could go back here the long way, sketch, and then just click on sketch. Now it should orient you normal too, so it's parallel to the screen. So now we can start sketching. Go to the corner rectangle tool again. Notice there's a line tool. We could draw the lines, it just takes long. So let's just go with corner rectangle. Hover over the bottom left corner when you get the orange dot. Go ahead and click. Drag this up to the far right, and you'll notice the X, and also notice the dashed orange line on the right. That means it's locking in with a coincident relationship. Those relationships come in handy. So that's already good. We won't have to dimension that 3 inches because it'll be tied to that edge. Now the height isn't so easy, but look at this. If we wanted to, we could find the midpoint. Eventually, there it is, like it highlights if you're in the middle, but we don't want that here. But later on, hint, hint, for lab 1B, that comes in handy. Anyway, we just go to a little bit lower, like around 1.5, and just get close to it. Like mine's 1.488, close enough. Click. Now why I say close enough is because you want to use Smart Dimension. Click on Smart Dimension. Click on this line on the right or the one on the left, it doesn't matter, or the 2 points. Click, move over to the right, center that dimension, because it's the way professionals do it. Click. Type in 1.5. Don't backspace over it. Get used to just typing over it. You're going to look far more professional if you're going to get a job. If they ever test you, usually a manager sits beside you and say, okay, here's a little quick drawing, draw this box, boom, boom, boom. And if they see you doing those types of things where you're actually doing it, what I just showed you, where you type in the value right away or use fast keys, they're going to be very impressed. It shows a level of proficiency. Otherwise, if you're backspacing, they might be like a novice user. Let's see if we can find someone else. All right, so anyhow, let's go to features now, because remember we're going to go into 3D, and we have a watertight boundary. It's fully defined because we can tell it's all, the geometry is all black. Also, you could lighten this up if it's a little, it could go to plain white here. See this little beach ball? Go to plain white, that might lighten it up a little bit on the screen. Okay, now that we're in features, go to Extrude Boss Base. It'll kick us into an isometric view, and it remembers our last setting of 0.5. And that's exactly what we want. We don't want to change it. Just hit the green check. All right, and to get rid of that blue line down there, just click anywhere. It goes away. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to cut. So we've added material thus far. Now let's cut a hole and drill a hole right here. Now there is the hole tool, which we will, it's called the hole wizard actually. We will learn that in a couple lessons in the future. If you want, you could look on exercise 4 near the end. We start using it. It's actually a fantastic tool. A library of different holes, countersinks, counterbores, and so on. Easy to use, very nice. But I want to show you how to do the basics here. So select this face and start a sketch. So click on the quick launch. It'll bring us normal too. Take your pointer and go to circle. Now, I'm going to go ahead and hover right about here. Now notice that little blue thing, that's just a tracer left behind when we selected the face. It's irrelevant. We don't really need it for anything. So just ignore it. Click here, drag out a circle, and you can see the radius that it gives. It doesn't give you a diameter, it gives you a radius here, and that's fine. Over on the left, you could actually see parameters that might interest you. But anyway, click here and make a circle. Now, once you make the circle, by the way, there are other CAD systems out there that automatically dimension. SolidWorks does that too. It's in the options menu when we went down here, and you could find it if you like. It's under the system options, and you can set it up to where it automatically adds dimensions, and then you just have to change them. But anyway, we're learning, so I'm going to use the Smart Dimension tool. Now, dimension to the center point of that circle to the left edge. So hover over this left edge. When it turns orange, click. Now, you might want to wheel out a little bit. Use your wheel on your scroll. And so you can put this right about there. Try and center to the dimension if you can. If you can't, it doesn't really matter. You can put it there later. And this is supposed to be 1 inch. So we're locating the center point 1 inch off of the left edge. Now we want to locate the center point again, so click on that dark blue cross to this top edge. Click on the top edge, drag it to the left, and click, and type in 1 and hit enter. So we've located it. Now we want to specify the diameter. So click on the outer edge of the circle, hover out here with your pointer, and click to release, and type in 0.75. Hit enter. All right. It says we're fully defined down here. We're ready to go. So we could just go to Features, Extruded Boss Base. Now I just made a mistake there. Remember, we want to remove material. Extrude Boss Base adds material. There are other CAD systems out there that give you both. Unfortunately, SolidWorks doesn't. And some people really like it that way. So anyhow, let's, instead of Extruded Boss, which adds material, Extruded Cut removes material. So you might have to remember that they're not interchangeable very easily. So now click on Extrude Cut. All right, now you can see it's going blind and it's showing this little preview with the yellow. We could say 0.5 and be done with it. It's the same thickness, but change always occurs inside design. And someday someone might actually thicken that plate instead of 1/2 inch to 1 inch. But then you're going to have to remember that the hole doesn't go through, and hope that you remember, or in this case, it should go through. So here's something that's called design intent. Whenever you know or have information like that, like, oh, that's always going to be a through hole because the bolt has to fit through it, you can design this way. Instead of blind, specify it as through all. Now there's through all both. That would be if there's something in front of it too that you want to cut through, but there's not. So just through all does the job. And that will ensure no matter how many changes come down, it will always be a through hole, i.e. meaning you can see through it. Okay, let's go back. You could go ahead and hit this little button here and go to isometric or spacebar. We'll get you there. All right, now we're going to learn the fillets. Now, for the fillet, go to the fillet tool here. Now, just to show you, if you hit the little arrow under fillet, there's chamfers too. Chamfers are an angle, straight angle, okay? A fillet is a tangent radius, meaning tangent at both ends where it comes in contact with the flat. So go to fillet, and now select this edge. Now, I get a little preview. Make sure full preview is turned on right here. Click on this over here on the left. And then select this edge too. All right, now over here you get this little dialog box, which essentially is the same as this one over here. So you could use either one if you want. This one might be quicker and easier. Just type in 1, hit enter, and the preview updates to show you what it's going to look like. I like that. Don't accidentally select a face. Watch this. If I accidentally select a face, it disappears. That's because it cannot add a fillet on all 4 of these edges of 1 inch. It's too big for that little 1/2 inch size. So click again on that surface and it will turn it off. So clicking on surfaces and edges makes a difference. So like this edge, this is an edge. See the way you know it's an edge? Take a look to the right of your pointer. It's a vertical line. Okay, and it highlights the edge like that. But once you go over a flat surface where there's no lines, you get a box. That means it's a surface. And you can fillet surfaces. There's very few CAD softwares out there that actually, where you can select a whole surface and it fillets. There's only a handful that I know of. Normally they make you select the edge, so that's a really neat little feature. But we won't use it in this case. So just make sure those 2 edges are selected. And if you're not seeing the preview, make sure full preview is turned on. Cancel it if for some reason you're still not seeing it, and try it again by selecting those edges. Hit the green check and you should have your fillets. Okay, now we're going to see how chamfer works. So click on the little arrow underneath fillet, find chamfer. Now over here there's different ways to define a chamfer: distance to distance, angle to distance, so on and so forth. We're going to stick with the this is angle to distance. And you'll see it's 0.039, but let's type in 0.125. And the angle 45 degrees sounds good. So select this edge here, and it should go all the way around. Full preview, it seems to remember it when after you've selected in the other window. If not, make sure it's turned on. And then go ahead and select this one right here. So you should have both of those showing it. Don't select anything else just yet. I do encourage you to have fun with this, but for this one, this is your first one, don't select too many edges. Hit the green check. And now you can see the chamfers. All right, let's rotate it. Now the way I'm rotating it is with my wheel. Push it down, move your mouse to the left or right, and tinker with it for a little bit. If you want, pause the video and learn how it really works while, like between the zoom and set, because you could use zoom to center, like if you move your pointer from left to right. You could also recenter it with zoom to fit. You could use the arrow keys to rotate it. All right. Now let's add the shell. To finish this off, go to shell and set the shell to 0.06. Now look at this, the units comes up. So if you want, you could set it, like if, let's say you knew what it was in metric, you could set it to millimeters or centimeters, things like that. But we want it in inches, so that's a nice feature that pops up. All right, select this face, and this face. Now, it does have a show preview. It's fine with this one. You can see the thickness. You could also shell it outward, which we don't want in this case. So turn that off. All right, and there it is. Hit the green check. And now we have it shelled. Now I selected those three faces. So you basically select whatever face you want to remove, and then everything else that's left over gets shelled at that wall thickness. And we'll learn more about shelling later. Okay, let's go back to isometric, and Control 7 is the fast key. I rarely use that one. I should. Okay, you should be able to see if you have a professional graphics card, it will start looking like aluminum. It actually has the shininess of aluminum. Now, most of you though, if you're working from home and have a video gaming card, this may be what you're getting, and that's basically what you're going to get. There are settings, like I said, you could look up on YouTube how to turn on Real View for a gaming card, but I don't recommend it. All right, I recommend buying just a professional card if you're going to do it for work. Okay, so now that we have that, I want to show you just a couple little things. There is, at least for my students, you all will get a license of this software, the ones that go to my college. Where you go to SolidWorks add-ins, and you should have PhotoView 360 as an option, but not everyone gets that, depending upon the school you're at. Okay, so if you don't have it, it's just, unfortunately, that's what you have. Okay, anyway, so PhotoView 360 and rendering tools should appear. Rendering tools tab. Now, if you go to integrated preview, this is going to appear, and it allows you to add cameras and turn on perspective views and so on. I like perspective view. It gives it a vanishing point, and so it actually makes it look more realistic. If you have it turned off, it looks kind of fake. So if you want it to look real, like a real rendering, that's a nice setting. Now, as you let it sit, it might take a minute to kick in, and it should start photorealistically rendering the image. And there we go. So you can see mine's updating, and it's rendering currently. And this is actually a multi-threaded process. So if you have a very high-end microprocessor, it will render this much faster than it is on mine. Mine is a low chipset all-in-one. It's the V series of Ryzen, but it is a professional series processor. Anyhow, you can see the longer you let it wait, the smoother it's going to get. Okay, anyway, I'm going to hit turn off integrated preview because it does suck up resources, especially on my computer, because not only am I recording, but it's rendering, and it's using all of the CPUs, or I should say all the cores, and I should say threads even. Okay, now let's say we wanted to make this look a little bit better. Click on this chamfer surface right here, and you'll see this beach ball appearances. Hit the little arrow to the right of the big beach ball, and you'll see it lists, like, do you want the whole part to be this next color that you're going to select, or the body, or just the chamfer, or that individual face? I'm going to select the whole chamfer, all the chamfers that are on there. So I click on that. Now, what happens over on the right, this should appear, your appearance gallery. And let's say I want to go to high gloss. And you can see there's all sorts of neat things to select. Like I'm going to select blue high gloss. And so that will color those surfaces. Now you could also select like this surface here to add to it, or any additional surfaces you might want. Hit the green check. Now, let's take a look at that again. Go to Integrated Preview if you have it. If you don't have it, you can just fast forward through this. Okay, let's just give it a second. There we go. Mine starts to render. And look at that. So you can do some really neat things with this. I'm going to turn that off. Now, what you want to do, since this part is done, those of you who are in my class, or those of you who are just taking this online just for fun, if you want to make a portfolio piece out of this, this is a good way too. But those of you in my class, you just have to submit this in D2L. And the way you do that is go to File, and notice it's an isometric view still. This is how I'd like it. Give me the best view you can, unless it's a drawing, then I just want a 2D view, but that's not till the 6th week. But anyhow, now go to Save As, and you'll see the different types of things you can save, and you want Adobe Portable Document Format, PDF. And go ahead and just hit Save. Oh, we should have labeled that capital E1 for exercise 1, but that's okay. And so what it will do, it has saved that as a PDF file. And so if I go back in there, let's see what it looks like here. And here it is. All right. And then you could submit that if you go into D2L assignments. You should see like exercise 1, submit. Go ahead and submit that. Now there are labs associated with this. There's 2 of them that go along with this, and then there's an optional lab if you want. I don't give extra credit typically, but if you want to do that, you could. So I'm going to bring up my training guide here. If I can find it. Let's see here. All right. So the way this works, like here is the actual totals. This is for my class. The exercises, that's one you just created today, is worth 10 points. Okay, make sure you submit that. I'll grade that online. And the way I grade usually, if it's missing something, it's a point off. But overall, as long as you follow those instructions, you should be in good shape. Then there's these 2 labs that are worth 5 points apiece. And then exercise 2 for next week, if it's a 60-week class, complete, it's worth 30 points. And there's a video for that. And there's videos for basically all of these labs. There's even a video, a review video for the quiz. Now the labs, I recommend trying them on your own before you watch the video. You could just type in like L1, and usually they pop up in D2L, or you'll see actually in the assignments, scroll down, you'll see all the labs with the videos that are associated with it. But anyhow, I usually recommend you watch those on your own. There's drawings that you work off of. And I apologize, drawings I should update. Some of them, the dimensions should all be there for the most part. It's just that they're a little difficult to read from time to time. But they're in the training guide. All right, so that's all the points. So if it's in the training guide here, if it's not on this list, you don't have to do it. Okay, those others are optional. Sometimes they give extra credit, but not usually for this. All right, you can see this has all the information we just covered for the versions, how the mouse buttons, how they work, the tools options menu, the icons, the planes, and understanding relations, and all this fun stuff. So we just finished that, and we just finished this. Here's the step-by-step instructions on what we just covered on how to model that part. Now it says here on page 24, now try lab 1. Patterns and arrays and mirroring will be covered in the next 3 chapters. So I'll probably show you a couple little ways to do that in advance if you watch my videos, but note that those things will be covered in like exercise 2, exercise 3. This is just the beginning. All right, so here is exercise 25. Now, if you've downloaded this, you could rotate this, rotate counterclockwise and see this a little bit better. And here are the instructions. Model the part, position it in an isometric view, save it as a PDF, submit it in assignments. Okay. But anyway, here we have it. It's 3.5 by 2 inch, and we're going to use the line tool instead of the rectangle tool for this one. So let's get started. All right. Go to New, Part, and hit OK. Make sure you're in IPS. Select the front plane, start a sketch, go to the line tool. Now notice if you hit the line tool, there's center line in there too. We're not going to use that right now, but we will use that a lot in the future. Anyway, go with line, and off of this bottom edge, click and drag a line straight up about 2 inches, click, and then to end the line chain, you could either hit escape on your keyboard, or what's better, double click. But if you don't double click fast enough, it creates another line. So try not to move, just double click. It's a little tricky. Now, if you've created another line by accident like that, hit escape, click on the line, but don't click on the points. Stay away from the points. Click on the line, and you can hit delete on your keyboard. Okay, and that will get rid of the line. All right. Otherwise, you could surround it like this. If you hit escape, click and drag a fence to surround just that line, and then hit delete. You could wipe that out too. Okay, go to the line tool here. Now SolidWorks has 2 methods of creating lines. Like what's neat is if you click and hold, drag it, like this is supposed to be 3.5, I believe. Drag it pretty close to that. Make sure it's horizontal. See, I'm following the dashed line, and I see the little symbol to the right of my pointer. It's a horizontal yellow line in a yellow box. Release it, and that turns off the sketch tool, so it doesn't chain the line. That's how SolidWorks worked in the early days, back in 1997 when I first started the software. But then they added the line chain, which is really nice. So go ahead and up here, just click and release, and that starts the line chain. And I'll just go across about 1 inch here, drag this down about 1 inch, click, go across about 1 inch, click, drag this up, align it, click, drag this across, drag this down a little bit lower, click, drag across, and look at this, you could infer to that point there, click and click. I'm going really fast because these really, I'd like you to do these on your own. This is just to help you if you need help, but you're going to be a much better designer if you try these on your own. And then if you go back, you're going to learn all these other little tricks that are cool. All right. I'm going to hit escape. Look at all this geometry is blue. I'm going to hit, does anyone remember how to fit? You could either click over here or in parentheses, the F key. All right, let's dimension it. Go to Smart Dimension, and notice it's watertight. I could actually see this gray inside there. Okay, this is supposed to be 2 inches. So I'm going to click on that edge, type in 2, click on this bottom edge, click down here, type in 3.5. Let me just make sure that that's right. I'm going to go back to the drawing. Yep, 3.5. We have 1, 1.75, and 2.5. And these are baseline dimensions. They stagger off of each other. So to do this, click here. And this is 1. Click on this line for baseline. Then this line here, I'm going to zoom out a little bit with my wheel and get up there. And that's going to be 1.75. Enter, and now click on the baseline again to this line, drag this out, and that is supposed to be 2.5. So 2.5, enter. All right, now this one, click on here to here. This is going to be 1 inch, which it was already set to that because it's snapped to the midpoint actually, which is really nice. And then on this one, click on that little surface there, or edge I should say, and this is going to be 0.85. All right, We got a problem though. It's underdefined, and I suggest in my class always try and define it. There will be a couple instances where I'm like, oh, don't worry about it, if it's a very simple, goofy design. But for production purposes, if you're working in a company, be sure that you always fully define. Okay, notice this one, it's not defined. It's blue. Hit escape. If you drag it, didn't lock in, it never really locked into that. So watch this. This is where you could substitute a dimension, because notice on my print, I do not have that dimension. We're going to substitute a relationship. So here's how. Click, first hit escape a couple times. First hit escape on your keyboard, maybe 2 times. Now hover over that blue line, click on it, release it. Now hold Control down, and I'm not holding my mouse button down, I'm just moving it over while Control is selected. Click on this line here. And over on the left, look at this. You could add all these different relations. There's horizontal, vertical, collinear. That's what we want. But notice there's perpendicular, parallel, equal. Don't use fix in this class. When we get into the advanced class, you can use it once you learn what it's really for, like if you're importing files from a legacy CAD system. It's not a bad idea. But aside from that, it will just make you pull your hair out if you use it too often. Go with collinear. And notice that little dashed line, that's an indicator that it's aligned to that. Hit the green check. Now it's fully defined. Now you see all these little boxes, you're getting more advanced now. You don't have to see those anymore. In fact, I'm going to go to View, Hide Show, and hide them. And it's down under Sketch Relations. So let's see here. Anyway, I'm not... Oh, there it is. It's down below. It's actually off of my screen. You could probably see it on your screen, but if you go, it's about the 4th one to the bottom. Unfortunately, I'm on a 4K monitor, and I'm recording on a 10p area, or a 1080p, I should say. So click on Sketch Relations, and it turns it off. You can leave them on. It doesn't hurt anything. It just kind of clutters the screen. Look at how nice that looks now without those. Okay, let's go to Features, Extrude Boss Base. The thickness of this is going to be 0.5. Okay, hit Enter. Click. We're done. Go ahead and File, Save As, Adobe Portable Document Format, Adobe PDF. Mine is cut off, so I apologize because of my screen. All right, and label that L1 for Lab 1, capital L1. Hit Save, and then upload that. Go to D2L, Assignments, scroll down to the bottom of the assignments, and you'll see all the labs. Find Lab 1, submit that PDF, and you just earned yourself 5 points. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Now in the training guide, it's this. Kind of looks familiar, somewhat similar to what we did before, but a little bit more complex. Same instructions. Eventually I stopped putting all these instructions in, you just watch the video, but really almost every time you're going to model the part, you're going to position it in an isometric view unless it's 2D drawing, and then you're going to save as a PDF and submit it. Okay, so here we have a 3x5, and then we have these blocks that 1.5 centered, 3.5 for the whole position. So let's go to File, New, Part, hit OK. Make sure you're in IPS. Now, if you always want to make sure you're in IPS, you could go up here to the gear, and the drafting standard I'm using is ANSI. So yours may look a little different if you're using ISO, because it puts a label over the line or next to the line versus in it. I don't really care. You could use ISO in my class, which is the international standard, or you could use ANSI, which is American National Standard. I'm going to use ANSI. And units, IPS, if you want, you could put in 3 decimal places so you can see it. Otherwise, it rounds it. But even though it rounds it on the dimension view, oops, there we go, okay, it actually does keep the full length with all of up to 8 decimal places underneath. Okay, so for this one, let's mix it up a little bit. Let's do this on the top plane. But just note, it really doesn't matter too much. Click on the top plane, start a sketch. Now, again, let's have a little fun here. We haven't looked at center rectangle, but I mentioned it earlier. Go to center rectangle, hover over that point, click and drag this out. Now go to smart dimension, and this is going to be 3 by 5. Notice I'm going a little faster because, again, this is a lab, and I'd like you to kind of do it on your own versus slowing it down too much. Okay, now we're going to put a circle in this upper left corner. Now, if you remember, we actually drilled the hole as a separate feature, extrude cut. This is a little trick I'm showing you. We're going to do a couple of tricks I'm going to show you right now. We're going to put this hole in here. Be careful not to touch that center line. Stay away from that center line or else it locks in. Okay, go to smart dimension, dimension the outside of the circle at 0.5. Then dimension the center point to this left edge at 0.75. And then the center point of that to the top edge at 0.75. Position the dimensions like I have it, otherwise you might get confused. So take your time, pause if you need to, and make the dimensions look like that. Okay, so we locate it. Now we want to get it mirrored over to the other side. So hit escape a couple times. Here's a little trick. Hit the little arrow to the right. Now, we will learn this in exercise 2 next week. So this is a little preview. You don't have to do it this way. You could dimension each one individually, but I'm going to show you a shortcut. Go to center line and hover, find the midpoint right here. Click on the midpoint, drag it to the center, click, and then drag this to the midpoint, click. Hit escape. Now we have center lines that we can mirror across. Yeah, we're going to learn how to mirror. Mirroring saves you so much time. Okay, now go ahead and after that's drawn, hit escape. Click on what you want to mirror. That's that entity there. Hold control and select what you want to mirror it about. That's this center line. Stay away from the points, by the way. Click on the center line, holding control on your keyboard. Okay. You can release now. Release all the mouse and the keyboard. And on the left, it should give you 2 instances. If there's anything additional in there, that arc 1 and line 7, click on it and hit delete on your keyboard. But that's what you should have. If not, hit escape and try it again. All right, now watch this. Find mirror entities. Mirrored it across. So the ingredient for a mirror, and I'm going to quiz you on this next week, to see if you watch this, is mirroring. Requires a center line. Now mirroring 2D sketches requires a center line. Mirroring 3D models requires a plane. That's something we're going to look at in the future, but keep that in the back of your mind. All right, so let's do this again. Click here, hold control, select this one here, because those are the 2 entities you want to mirror. You can release control. Now, actually hold it down again, I'm sorry, and then select the horizontal center line right here. So we've selected those 3 entities. Should be listed arc 1, arc 2. Yeah, it calls circles arcs because technically that's mathematically what we call it. All right, so we have the line, 2 arcs. Go to mirror entities. Look at that, so much easier. Now notice they're already fully defined. Let's double check. Change this. Look at that. They all update. Again, another powerful function of mirroring is it keeps a symmetric relationship with those entities that you mirrored across. Just to show you, if I click on this line here, you could see the, or if I should say, if I select this, those little symbols, symmetrical. They're all symmetric to each other. Okay. All right, let's go to Features, Extrude Boss Base. And now it's extruding up because we drew on the top plane, like a tabletop. All right, this is supposed to be 1.5 inches. Let me just double check. Yeah, 1.5. So 1.5, hit enter. Now I just click anywhere to get rid of that blue geometry. Now I want to get the center cut out. Select this face. There's several ways, by the way, you could do this. This is just one way I'm showing you. Start a sketch. Go to center rectangle. And because we drew it at the center, look at the benefit. We could just drag this out, click to drop that, That dimension needs to be 1.5 inches. So I'm going to go right to Smart Dimension, dimension this at 1.5. Let's center that a little bit better. All right, now we could rotate it. Remember the wheel? Hold the wheel down on your mouse and move left, right, up and down. Or you could go to View Orientation. All right, let's go to Features, Extruded Cut. And this only goes 1 inch deep. Whoops. Oh, not through all, sorry. Blind, 1 inch. There we go. All right, so we've removed the material with an extrude cut. Now you can have some fun with this. Now, first of all, let's say you wanted to see through it. Hit this, look at this. There's just shaded, removes the edges if you want it to look more realistic. There's hidden lines removed. And you could rotate in these views too, whichever one you prefer. There's hidden lines. So you see the hidden lines, those are the dashed lines because they're hidden behind geometry. And these are very useful. And then there's wireframe. Wireframe hasn't been used much since the 1970s and 80s on old CAD systems because they were too weak to draw solids. But still can come in useful. All right, and that concludes this exercise and these labs. But for this, actually, let's go back to Shaded with Edges. You could go to Perspective. You could add some fillets on this if you want to have some fun. So go to the Fillet tool. And this is optional. I really encourage it, though, because it makes you a better designer. Just have a little fun and see what you can do. And look at this. There's Superman X-ray vision. You can see right through it. Okay, now you could go to Chamfer. You could actually put countersinks on these edges. Oops, or the whole face. This whole face. This one. Have fun. All right. Oh, missed one right there. Now let me show you a little trick here to edit it. Right click on Chamfer, Edit Feature, and select that edge to add it. There you go. Now rotate it, select the underside, and go to Shell. And you could keep it at 0.1, that'll work. And now you have a thin-walled enclosure. Yeah. And that could hold up, if we designed it properly, it could hold up our PlayStation system or whatever, if we drew it big enough. This is a little, it might be a little too narrow there. All right, so now just go to File, Save As, Adobe PDF, if you could see it there, Adobe Portable Document Format. And this is L1B. Hit Save. And go ahead and upload that. Okay, that concludes this exercise and the 2 labs. See you next week.